Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today will be part 3 of our discussion with Most Worshipful Brother Edward Woods, Grand Master of Masons in Washington.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have our usual cast of 4 hosts. Myself, I'm Matt Appel from Mill Creek number 243 in Montlake Terrace, Washington. And we have very worshipful brother David Colbeth from King Solomon number 60 in Auburn, Washington. And worship brother Stephen Chung from Prince Charles 153 in Kelowna, BC. And worship brother Jarrod Dunham from Penticton 147 up in Penticton, British Columbia. And we have our special guest for our 3rd episode in a row, whom we appreciate being here and taking time out of his, I'm sure he's just laying around eating bonbons and watching his stories kind of schedule. We have Most Worshipful Brother Edward Woods, who's the Most Worshipful Grand Master of Free and Accepted Masons of Washington. Most Worshipful Sir, thank you for continuing to hang out with us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure bonbons isn't on his schedule. Yeah, he hasn't made time to go and get them yet. Cashews.
There you go. They keep better. So Stephen, you had a question. I cut you off at the last episode before it was David this time. David cut you off at the last episode about the question you had for a Grandmaster. Figure we'd start afresh. So go for it.
Yeah, well, our listeners always like to know about the Grand Master and his year and his goals and his theme, if you will, and I think the message he wants to get out there this year. And so let's hear that.
All right. So I think I already talked a little bit about Know Soten and the meaning, which is know thyself. And then of course, going to the most recent Prince Hall annual communication or annual session, and the Grand Master having the same essentially, message, look in the mirror. So I think an important thing, and especially given today's society, is to hopefully do more work at getting the brothers to look at themselves, look at what we need to do to improve themselves, improve Masonry, improve their lodges. There's been a lot of work that's been done over the last couple of Grand Masters in terms of taking our lodges to that next level, making our buildings look good for our communities, and improving the work that we do in our lodges. The 6 steps, using that process to vet people before they come into our fraternity, doing good investigations to make sure that we investigate people and find out the information that we need to make that good decision, bring them into our lodge where we do good ritual and good degree work. And the one thing that has kind of, it always bugged me when I've heard brothers periodically say, well, it's not about the degree work. It's everything. It's absolutely about the degree work, and it's absolutely about how well it's done. That's what sets that tone for that guy coming in as to whether he's going to stay. I mean, I can only imagine myself from everything I had read coming into this fraternity, what I expected when I got here, and then to find a bad degree or just an attitude of we don't care. And I just think how disappointing that has to be for guys that experience that when they come in. And I don't want that to happen. We have to do better than that. We have to, there's been a few things over the last couple of years that I think we need to focus on. And I have some plans kind of laid out to address those through our leadership retreat. We have a great opportunity there to capture a large number of brothers in our fraternity. I would like to see us add a couple of things in terms of dealing with our real estate and also dealing with our finances in our lodges. I think those are two things that we struggle with besides the ritual work and some of the other things that we could do better at. And it ties hand in hand with with the investigation, making sure you get the right person who isn't going to come in and rob you blind. So I've asked some very good Masons that are on our committees to assist in putting together some coursework on looking at real estate and how we should appropriately handle that. Looking at, I don't want to use the word audit. I think that scares people. I think people think that when you hear audit, you have to hire this company that's you're going to pay $5,000 for. Financial review. I want us to do good financial reviews of our lodges, and for the lodges that have large sums of money, they do maybe need to do that audit, every so many years down the road. But every other year or every year, we need to do at least a good financial review. So some of that stuff is kind of one thing I have at the ready. Last year was the first year that the Grand Master said, well, I'm not going to have the deputies do monthly reports. I hate doing reports when nobody's going to read them. And I think it's fair to say that probably not all those reports got read. So why are we making brothers take the time to do reports that nobody's potentially going to look at until something goes sideways? So what I did instead, I worked with Cameron, and I've continued it this year, is we did quarterly meetings with the deputies using Zoom. And so I set up a quarterly schedule where I would have an agenda of items for us to talk about, but also shift the focus so that they could talk about the things going on in their district, the problems, issues, the good things, and have that conversation with the rest of the deputies. This year, I'm going to do the same thing with our committee chairman, and specifically research and education, membership development, technology. It probably will not involve, finance, jurisprudence. I mean, I look at the way some of our committees are set up. Some of those committees, finance, jurisprudence, real estate committee, we work with those guys on a pretty regular basis, and that's more tied to the daily business of the fraternity. These other committees, I think, are more tied to our membership development, the education that we do, lodge leadership retreat. And it's those guys, I think, that need to have that face-to-face time. And so I've asked the junior and senior grand wardens to facilitate a quarterly meeting with those guys, so that we can get out of the silos. And then finally, my last piece to this is with the long-range planning committee. We've struggled with that committee, I think, over the last couple of years, and I was horrified when I discovered this, and I was a little bit ashamed with myself that I discovered it so late, being the Grand Master now. But we have a wonderful document that was developed a few years ago. David knows probably what I'm talking about or getting ready to say, and that's the 6 pillars. It's got a great mission statement. It's got the 6 pillars that we believe are the supports to our fraternity. What I have not been able to find are any measurables that are built into those pillars, and or things that our committees need to be working on in order to make those 6 supports be in place. And so that is where I'm going to hopefully shift the focus of the LRP committee. I'm going to bring somebody on who's already on the committee. I haven't asked this individual yet, so they'll remain nameless. But I'm going to ask somebody who has some project management experience to facilitate working through that process of establishing, I'm going to say, 2 to 3 things that we can measure. So let's take membership, for example. What can we look at to say that membership is doing good? What can we look at to say we need to improve on what we're doing? And what do we need to do completely different? So I think there's some metrics that we can look at, either through things that we are doing or through data that we are collecting in Grandview, that will help us tell a story for membership, for example, and just get us to get some of those things lined out so we have something measurable. We have some talented brothers who I've brought on to the membership development committee, one of whom does a little bit of web work, and the other one does a little bit of he's going to school, I think, for some of the same things I work on in my real job, which is analytics and just looking at data, and talking about maybe creating some kind of dashboard, some kind of visual that we can put onto our either through Grandview or on our website to let the brothers know how we're doing on things, right? And it may be embedded in that will be the things that we create from research and education that can help us do that thing better in that particular pillar. So it's a lot of this is up here right now. It's getting to paper, and over the next couple of days, I've got some emails that'll be going out and some meetings that I'm going to set up so that I can finally get some of these things in motion. And really, that's what I've got for my year. I know that Right Worshipful Steve, Right Worshipful Jimmy, and Right Worshipful Roger, I think it's fair to say that we all kind of agree on, what those things should be. And so that's kind of the beauty in this, is that the previous Grand Masters that I've worked under and the brothers I'm working with, this year, we all share that same understanding, that same goal. We all have some different ideas, and that's fine. We're going to have different ideas about how to do it. But I think the consensus is that we agree that there's some things that kind of need to be tightened up a little bit. And so for me, it's about continuing those things that I feel strongly about, the 6 steps, doing proper investigations, that kind of, protecting our fraternity, and then also providing some tools to some things that fall in line with that 6 steps. And I think for me, that's what's been missing. I've for a couple of years, one of the things that I would bring up quite frequently in our meetings was I didn't feel that we gave some of our committees the best direction on the things we want them to work on. And when you look at the code and say, hey, what's the code say? For some of our committees, it's really vague. And without giving these guys some kind of guidance, that's a failing on my part if I don't do that. And so that's one of my goals this year, is to really try to give a little bit of guidance to those committees, get them to come out of their silos and work together, and give them a common thing to work on, which is going to be, finishing that 6 pillars or taking the 6 pillars to the next level. It's a wonderful document. It's as valid today as it was when it was put together. I think we take it to that next step, and I think that just makes us even better. So that's kind of what I have in mind, and then to have fun. I like to have fun just like the next guy. So getting around the state as much as I can, more than just attending district meetings, but trying to attend some lodge meetings. I think the brothers value that. Be seen, be visible, and be able to, be in a place and just listen, to what people have to say. I think we've got a lot of talented people in our fraternity, and I think we just need to tap those resources and put them to work. And we're going to be in a really great place moving forward. So
I'm going to say, as somebody who worked on the looking at the committee structure thing that I did not finish the job well, but setting that aside, the most common bit of input I heard when we talked to the committee chairs was that they felt like they were operating out in a vacuum. And so I know the year that I was a committee chair, the Grandmaster said to me, I said, well, what do you want? What do you want us to do? And he was like, yeah, go read the code, follow what that says. And I was, having some sense, there's micromanaging, which you don't want to do, but having some sense that at least there's somebody out there who cares and is looking around at what you're doing is a good thing for sure. So
yeah, and that's why I when Cameron said no reports, I struggled with that a little bit, and I think what he meant was no reports monthly. He still expected deputies to report things to him, right? He still expected that communication to take place. I've always felt, and this is just from my personal observation, and from when I was a deputy, right? You first you get asked, hey, you want to be a deputy? Well, yes, I would like to be I'd be happy to be a deputy for you, right? And then they take you to Grand Lodge. They put the collar on, shake your hand you your patent, and then you don't see or hear from anybody for the rest of the year. You might get a phone call, but that's if there's a problem somewhere, or if you find a problem and you call the Grand Master. But other than that, you did your monthly reports. You weren't really sure if anybody read them, and what do I do from here? And I think we owe our deputies. I think we owe anybody that we ask to do something in our fraternity more than that. And I don't like micromanaging. I get that, but I feel we got to give them something, that we want them to work on, and then turn them loose.
Forgive my ignorance. You guys are deputies for 2 years in a row.
Yes.
And you don't have any kind of training before you become deputies.
No, we do. We have our Lodge Leadership Retreat team has a deputy resource team. We call ourselves DIRT. I'm not sure if that's because we're old as dirt, or it just happened to be the acronym, right? Deputy resource team. We have a pretty solid, I think, program on the many tasks that our deputies will go through when they're a deputy.
But you don't have like a weekend retreat where all the deputies get together to be told what they're supposed to do.
We have. So
Okay.
when I first became deputy and I got done, I helped with the deputy resource team. That was the other piece that I worked with the LLR. We did that. We had an east side and a west side training, but it was back to that fire hose again, right? It was like you're feeding these guys from a fire hose on everything that we want them to do and understand. So when the pandemic hit, we thought, oh, we got Zoom. We got this wonderful opportunity. We'll just break this thing up, right? Well, I think we were like almost halfway through the year by the time we completed touching on all the things we wanted deputies to do. And it's like the Zoom thing is there's value in that, but this is not the way to do this. So this year we're going to go back to an east side, west side. The only difference is when you attend the west side, the east side guys can join it by Zoom, just to help out with the travel. I think Zoom's a good tool. And then we'll do the same thing for the west side. We're going to get back to that kind of one day thing, but it's going to be dialed into some very specific things. We've got a deputy handbook that I think is well done and really expounds upon those things that the code really doesn't cover all that well. But I think there's some things we need to focus on more than others, like financial reviews, in lodges. We need to make sure our deputies understand what that looks like. So when they're checking our lodges for that, they're not just checking a box on something they think is that process. I want them to understand what that process should be. So that's where hopefully the focus will be in that get together in-person training. We do have training. Now that said, I had a deputy last year who made the statement to me he did not know what his job was as a deputy. That he had not seen yet in any of the trainings we had done anything that told him how he needed to do his job as a deputy. And to that, I don't think there is any course out there that tells you how to be a deputy. It's the combination of understanding what the code does and what you get from the outgoing deputies on the issues and concerns in your district. I think I think we're kind of talking about two different things when we talk about how to be a deputy versus here's the tools on the things that you will touch on as a deputy and how you can navigate through some of that. I think it's fair to say we probably need work in both those areas. But that's the process. It's finding what's been working. We keep doing those things, and the things that haven't been working, we're going to move off from that and try something different. So,
I didn't mention it in the LLR meeting today, but I had thought about it when Jarrod mentioned that, it triggered my mind. We have upcoming somewhat soon, right in August, there's that. So you want to be Grand Master or whatever, you want to be a Grand Officer class. Maybe there would be at the LLR event, maybe there could be a segment on, so you want to be a deputy, to give them an idea, because of course they have to be a past master. And so in theory, they've been a leader of an organization and hopefully successful. And so it's just kind of the next progressive step, hopefully, as a deputy.
Yeah, I think, I went to Imperial Shrine and they pulled probably about, I didn't get a head count, but I'm going to say 20 plus or minus Grand Masters from across the United States. And the topic of discussion was, a lot of it was this stuff here that I'm talking about. And the biggest thing I think was mentoring our members, especially those that we put in leadership roles. I think we have a horrible habit of taking a new Mason, especially a guy who probably hasn't really worked much. You know, he's young in his life, really. I mean, you know, many times just starting a career. So he hasn't had the chance to be a supervisor or to have that kind of responsibility. We bring him into a lodge, put him through the degrees, and the next thing you know, hey, you're the senior warden or the worshipful master. And it's like, you know, it's how do you expect one? Most people you're just going to scare the heck out of, and they're just going to run screaming from the lodge, and you never see them again. We have to do a better job of, I think, one, providing that training, and we can do that through the lodge leadership retreat. We can do that through mentoring, but at the same time, we also need to stop doing things like the progressive line. I'm in the last couple of years, I've solidified my thought on progressive lines, and what I mean by that is we have to be willing to put people that are suited to do a job in those positions. And we have to quit just putting somebody in a position just because they're the next person in line, especially if they're not equipped to do it, or if they demonstrated that they just don't have the skill sets to do that. If we want our lodges to survive, we have to grasp those experiences that we have from guys coming in and put them in positions. There was a book that some of you may be familiar with. It was Hither We Are Traveling, or something along those lines, whither we are traveling. But it talked about in there's one chapter in there, it talked about a guy who joins a lodge in a jurisdiction. His lodge has over 700 members. And when it talks about the progressive line, he's like, I'm never going to be master in my lifetime in this lodge through the progressive line system. But he has the skill sets, either he's worked as an attorney or he's worked as an accountant. He has that skill set, from life and from work to be able to be in that position. And so I think that's kind of what we need to look at.
Jarrod's an accountant. We poke him about it a lot. A bookkeeper, sorry, accountant, but
I call it accounting light. all the experience, half the cost.
Well, and I'm going to say this too about that. Just because don't make your accountants the treasurer, right? That guy may not want to deal with that stuff when he comes to lodge, but he certainly has the skill set to manage any of the other positions in a leadership role. And I think that's what I'm getting at. We have to tap that leadership ability that people have and they bring to the lodge. And then for those that are coming in and don't have that, you mentor those guys, right? And then when they're ready, you put them in line. And I think by doing that, we put ourselves in a better position of having lines that are fresh and not having a past master that has to sit in a position or rotate through positions year after year, because we spend all of our time filling the positions and not mentoring the young guys that are coming in behind us. So I think we need to take a look at the composition of our lodges, and at the end of the day, you do what's best for your lodge, not what's best for somebody's ego.
So there is a second part to the 6-step program that's the mentorship program, and it's all very well laid out in there, and it speaks to that exactly. And if you can get one guy in each lodge to open that file and start reading some of the documents in there about the process and whatnot, and finding just a couple of guys that are willing to commit to doing it consistently, you can have a very effective mentorship program, and somebody looking out for these new guys as they're going through their Masonic journey, not just the guy who signed their petition, because he's not always going to be the best mentor.
I will
Absolutely.
say, Grandmaster, I think this evening, between mentorship, quality of ritual, long-range planning, and a couple of the other issues, I think you've mentioned all the issues that we like to get on soapboxes about between the four of us there. I think you hit them all. It was actually pretty remarkable. But with that, unless you guys have one last question for the Grandmaster before we head out, it's getting to be time.
Thank you very much.
Hearing none, on behalf of Stephen and Jarrod and David and myself, and I won't do last names because otherwise I'll mess them up apparently. And I want to thank you, most worshipful sir, for being here. Is there any last parting words of wisdom you'd like to toss out before we sign off for the night?
No, keep doing what you're doing. I think the work that you brothers are doing is necessary, and it's great work. I enjoy watching your podcasts. I think they're informative. Hopefully I didn't ramble on much, but it's there's a lot going on up here. This first couple of weeks, I can say almost a month now, has been while it's been the most rewarding thing again that is happening in my life currently. It's exhausting too. And I don't mean exhausting in the bad way. I mean, it's just, you're going to get tired doing this work, and that's a good kind of tired. So it's,
well, you know what they say, by the time you're done your year, you'll be ready to do it.
it's almost bittersweet. I was telling some of the past grands the other day, I was saying, it's, you work up to this day, right, where you get elected Grand Master. And then it's almost kind of sad, because it's like, now you got this countdown that's happening where it's going to end in 365 days. And it's like, man, what am I going to do next? I've been told I don't have to worry about that. So they'll always find work for you to do. So
there's always more.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, with that, on behalf of the guys and Grandmaster, thank you all for listening. And we look forward to talking to you again soon on the Working Tools podcast.
All right. Have a good night.